Welcome to the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast, where we hope to inspire you to embrace your God-given gifts, skills, and passions in order to lead with confidence. We want you to remember that you are fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God, and you are fully loved by Him.
You have been designed on purpose by God with unique gifts and passions in order to love and lead those around you. I'm your host, Esther Littlefield, a pastor's wife, business owner, mom, and writer.
And I'm Esther's co-host, Holly Kane. I'm a wife, mom, and business owner. I also write at hollykane.org, where I focus on my passion for women's ministry.
Together, we chat about important issues that Christian women leaders face. In addition, we interview other women just like you who lead in various roles, from church to community to business. Through this podcast, we offer you encouragement, tools, and resources to help you on your leadership journey. We are so glad you're here with us. Welcome to this episode of the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast. We are so glad you are here with us today. And I am recording in person today with Holly. So, hey, Holly, I'm so glad you're here with me.
I'm so glad to be here.
For those who are listening, we are actually recording in my office together, and we're streaming this into our Facebook group at this moment. So this is like all an experiment. We have no idea how it's actually going to sound when it comes out to your earbuds. So we're praying that the tech is going to work and that this whole experiment is going to happen.
It may be a total disaster.
It could be.
We're sorry to Facebook world. We're sorry to podcast world, but
yeah,
this is us.
Exactly. So today's episode is our 3-year anniversary episode. So we are celebrating the fact that we have made it 3 whole years of doing this podcast together. Can you believe that, Holly?
I actually can't. Well, I want to say I can't, but I can. I don't know. It feels surreal. I guess I'll say that.
Yeah. It's hard to believe that we have been doing this for 3 years. But what we're going to do today is we're just going to kind of do a fun episode where we're going to answer some questions that we got from you, our listeners, and also some questions that we thought of that we wanted to share with you. And we're going to also throw in a few deep thoughts, I think.
Yes,
right?
we are. It may be a little scary.
Yes.
But we are definitely are going to.
Okay. And then we're going to have an intermission in this episode, which we haven't done before, but it's not going to be like an actual intermission. We're not going to be like, come back in 10 minutes.
Go get popcorn. Have a break.
Right. But we're going to do in the middle of the episode, we're going to answer just some random fun questions that we are going to pick from some cards that we have that we're just going to answer randomly a few questions for fun.
Well, I thought that you were stacking the deck, but then she spread them all out. So
That's
I feel
right.
like
I didn't stack the deck. No.
Okay.
All right. So if you are new here, if this is your first time listening to our podcast, thank you for joining. This is not our normal episode, but we are, like I said, celebrating 3 years of the podcast. So we wanted to mix it up. The past 3 episodes that we have done in this celebration have been the best of series. And so we did best of year 1, best of year 2, and best of year 3. So this kind of wraps up our celebration this month all around this 3-year anniversary. So let's kick off with our first question. Holly, you want to start?
Okay. If you could go back in time 3 years, what would you tell yourselves not to worry about? So this was actually someone sent in this question. Is that correct?
Yeah. One of our listeners put this in when I asked on Instagram, like, what should we answer? So it's a good one.
Okay. So do you have any thoughts?
I do. Yeah. So I think the biggest, worry, and I don't know if it was really a worry, probably just a thought that I had when we were getting ready to start the podcast was, is anybody actually going to listen? So I kind of had like that question. Like I thought in my head that this podcast was needed. I believed it was a good idea. And I believed that God was asking us to do this. But I was like, but I don't actually know if anyone's going to listen. But looking back, I realized like that was a kind of a silly thought because people definitely have listened. So,
well, it sure didn't feel silly at the time.
No, because when you step out to do something like start a podcast, it does feel scary and it feels like, I don't even know how to explain it, but it feels like a big risk. Like you don't know if you're just going to fall on your face or if it's going to be something really needed.
Yeah.
So what about you? What was your thought?
Yeah. So along the same lines, I just wondered if it would actually be impactful. And I know that that sounds weird, but I knew that there was a hole in the podcasting world for this type of podcast. And I knew that if we were looking for that podcast, that there had to be other people looking for this podcast. So I knew those things, but I was still just wondering, like, are we actually going to do anything worthwhile, or are we just going to sit here and say weird things that are only funny to you and me?
Right.
I mean, we do our fair share of that, but, right, like, I wanted to make sure that it was impactful to people and that it actually made a difference. And after reading our reviews and hearing what people have to say in our Facebook community, it's really refreshing to have people tell us that it is still impactful to them in their daily lives, and that they listen to us in the car and on walks and doing the dishes. And so I'm really, really, really happy that it actually is impactful.
Yeah. Right. Because it would be, I guess, if you were just doing a podcast for fun or as a hobby, it wouldn't really matter if you were making an impact. But when you're kind of taking it really seriously and wanting it to be something that makes a difference for people, then actually finding out that it is helpful.
It's very validating. Yeah. And I know that, like you said, God called us to it. And so therefore we should do it no matter what. But it is validating when people say, hey, I got this out of your episode or that. Whatever.
Right. Yeah. For sure. All right, let's go to our next question, Holly. What is your favorite part of podcasting?
Okay, I'm really happy you asked me first because on the doc that we work from, I feel like I was like, oh, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to say the same things as Esther. And now it's going to sound like you're saying the same things as me. So that's good.
Cheater. You just copied my answers.
I know. Okay, so my favorite part of podcasting, I think, is being part of the conversation about women leading. And I don't know if we're necessarily on the cutting edge of that conversation, but we're in the room and we're having that conversation. And I really love the fact that no matter what your theological bent is on that there's still inspiration that can be found here and still ways that you can level up your leadership no matter what that looks like. And so I really like that we have not isolated anyone when it comes to that, and that all are welcome along that spectrum, but that we're all here for each other no matter what it looks like. And not that we're pushing any one person to become more one way or the other. So I really enjoy that. And I really love supporting women's growth and pushing them to think about things differently, fostering community. I would say maybe I'm a personal development junkie. I don't really know. But I love having these conversations with people because I don't have them in real life. So having them in the community and on the podcast is really important. And of course, I love doing this with you, Esther. I think that, I know we were really good friends before I left, but I feel like we've become even more good friends. That sentence doesn't make sense. Better friends.
Better friends.
Over the past 3 years of doing this. So.
Yeah. Okay.
What about you?
Well, since you stole my answers, ditto.
Yours are a little different.
Okay. Well, I love that we are able to have the conversations we have with our guests. So not just the conversations about leading, because obviously that is part of it, but just hearing different people's stories. Like I love hearing people's stories. And so the fact that we get to sit down and interview these women and hear their stories and their different backgrounds. And sometimes there are just moments on those conversations that I think, oh my word, like even if nobody else hears this episode, I'm really excited that I got to hear that. I am blessed. There's times when I get choked up, where I get moved to tears, where God speaks to me directly through something that a guest says. And that may not even impact any of our listeners in the same way that it impacted me. But I'm just grateful that we get to do that.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And then I love the community of listeners that we have and getting to know the women in the Facebook group and through Instagram and just the different, places on social media where we connect. And then even sometimes in our programs a little bit more deeply. And I like working with you. So that's, one of my favorite things too, is just definitely growing deeper in our friendship and getting to just like hash out these issues that we both feel passionate about.
Yeah.
I mean, this is basically just like we get to record conversations that we might have had like in the car driving somewhere or talking on the phone, but we get to kind of, because we're going to record it as a podcast, we're forced to dig a little bit deeper into what we really want to say about it and, what we believe about it. And that I think helps both of us as well.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Awesome.
Okay. I just did what our friend Ren said not to do. As someone's ending their question, you're not supposed to say, okay, I love it. And we do that all the time. Okay.
That is my worst habit in podcasting. And when she did that reel, I was like, oh,
So
Ren, you're
guilty.
calling me out right now.
I know. I felt so attacked.
Oh, that's my favorite thing to say when a guest says something good is, I love it.
I know.
So, okay.
It's because I do love it.
I know. But our listeners probably don't love hearing us say, I love it 45 times
Maybe
in one
we
episode.
need to have a list of like the acceptable other things we could say.
Ren actually does have a list of things you should say.
Oh, well,
instead.
then I need
So
to
we
print
need
it.
it like as a sticky note on our on our computer. So if you don't know what we're talking about, Ren Robbins, she's a podcast coach and she's in my program Uplift and she helps people with their podcast. And so she did a reel recently talking about like what not to say when your guest says something powerful. And one of them is don't say I love it. So I'll try to link that up in the show notes.
We should have an I love it counter. If we could have like an AI bot go through and listen to them.
Oh, I don't know.
It would be a really high number. Okay, moving on. I'll ask the next question.
Okay.
All right. What were your favorite conversations in our past year? Just year 3.
Okay. So this is hard to do. Just gonna say that because it's hard to pick your favorites. I have a hard time picking favorites, but I tried to pick 3 of my top. That doesn't mean I don't like the other ones. And I picked some of our interviews that we've done. So one is episode 121 with Tara Matson, and that was all about the issue of integrity in leadership. And it was really powerful. She gave us a lot of things to consider and really kind of, I don't know what the right phrase is, but I feel like she sort of leveled the playing field in that there's none of us that always get the integrity thing right.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I like to think, oh, yeah, I'm a person of integrity, and therefore I don't have this issue. But she really helped me to think differently about it and about how we always need to be consistently checking in on those issues and making sure that we are staying in integrity of like what we say and how we live. So,
and I think
that
she was
fun.
really well spoken too. That was the other. She was a good orator. Is that the right word?
A good speaker.
A good speaker.
We can simplify it. Yes. So that was one. And then episode 133 with Tammy Berklid. And she was so great. I loved her story specifically because she had such a different leadership experience of leading a construction company. So she was in a male-dominated field, and she really just shared so much wisdom around leading, about her transition into the leadership of that company, and also just about how treating her customers and her clients, with integrity and fairness was, I was really inspired by her story.
She had a really good perspective on a lot of things. I asked a lot of questions. I felt like I knew what her answer was going to be, and it was totally different. And I didn't do that on purpose, but I felt like, oh, she's probably going to say this. And she had a totally different perspective, which I really appreciated.
Yeah. And then episode 158 with Katie Jones, I liked that one too, because I feel like she really hit hard on some of the common, lies or common challenges that we have around the issue of money as Christians and as leaders. And so I just really loved her perspective and how we kind of got into near the end of the conversation about the question of like, can Christians have too much money? And I love getting into topics that are hard and just a little bit more challenging and kind of figuring out, how do you think about this?
Yeah.
And how do you figure out where's the biblical place to land? So
I like that.
What about you, Holly? What are some of your favorites?
So mine are actually all right in order, which is really kind of funny. I really enjoyed our episode 141 with Brittany Ann, where she has the book Falling in Love with God's Word. And I personally have gone through that actually and the workbook, and it's really, really good. So that one has had a big impact on me. I've really enjoyed that. And then the next episode was not an interview, actually. And I think the reason I like it is because it is something that I had been thinking about for a long time.
Yeah.
And that was episode 142, Balancing Ambition with Surrender. And I just really enjoyed that conversation because I basically just got to say what I was thinking and kind of mulling over, and we got to hash through it. And I think that, especially in the business world, that is a really hard thing to balance, because there's a lot of people talking about hustle and manifesting your millions and freedom and financial freedom and all of those things. And it's so refreshing to have a biblical perspective on surrendering our will and our ambitions to God. So,
yeah.
Okay. And the last episode that I really enjoyed, which I think I'm going to mention quite a few more times, was episode 143 and 144 with Christy Wright. And I'm sure we're going to talk about this, but just absolutely one of my favorite episodes of year 3. And I don't know, that episode was just so powerful, and Christy has so much experience, and she is so fun and down to earth, but yet she doesn't say words like and like, and all the things that we say have been filtered out of her conversation, and she just sounds polished all the time. So
I don't think she said I love it like 45 times in the episode.
No, I know she didn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. So those were your favorite conversations.
Yeah.
All right. So our next question, which is pretty similar.
Okay.
And we did get this specific question from a listener, and she wanted to know, what was your favorite interview as a host?
Okay. Well, I already mentioned Christy, so there's that. You mentioned Tara, which I totally agree with. And I think both of them, I look up to people who are really good at public speaking.
Yes.
And so I think that's part of the reason that I liked both of them. They were so relatable, so easy to listen to. And I felt personal impact, but I really looked up to their ability to public speak.
Yes.
And then my next one, which I don't know if I'm allowed to say, I didn't even ask Esther. Her episode hasn't even aired yet. But in my brain, we've already done it because we already recorded it. But it's Nikki Coziers. Did I say that right?
Coziers. I think it's Coziers.
Okay, I'm sorry, Nikki.
It's a hard name.
But she's coming up in the future. Yeah. And honestly, that was one of my favorite episodes so far to record as an interview. Yeah. As I look over the past 3 years, she's one of the top ones.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that one will be coming soon if you're listening here in July.
Really good. But technically it'll be in year 4, so.
Right.
I cheated in my answer.
Yeah. She just has favorite interview as a host. So, I mean, that didn't have to be.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, what about you?
I mean, if I had to pick just one, I would probably say Christy Wright.
Yeah.
Because, for a lot of the same reasons that you mentioned, she's such a pro communicator that you don't even know, you don't notice it, but you notice it.
Exactly.
So, when we would ask her a question, she would give an answer that probably is fairly scripted. She probably had the 6 points or the 3 points or whatever that she needed to make, but she never sounded scripted. She was so down to earth, so funny and easy to talk to that she didn't put off. I mean, there's some people who are professional speakers and authors and whatever that, you know that when you talk to them, you're going to know that they're there for the limited amount of time that they could squeeze into their schedule. And I'm not saying that about any of our guests. I don't feel like we've had guests like that, but it was just it was a really fun conversation. and we went way over our time.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, how is she doing this?
Yeah.
I thought for sure we would have to cut it short, and she just kept going. So like, well, I'm not going to stop her. So
I know. Neither was I. I was like, I'll keep podcasting until it's nighttime at this point.
Yep. So yeah, that was definitely a favorite. All right.
Okay. So this was also someone sent in this question. I'm not sure who it was, but they asked, how do you stay on a consistent schedule? And so my answer is Esther. Well, so if you've listened to the podcast for any length of time, you know that I have mentioned multiple times that I'm not as consistent a person as Esther is. Esther is like in there. She will plod through it step by step to the very end. And I'm off in some random field crying, sleeping, dancing with a daisy chain on my head. So Esther is the reason that you guys have had consistent episodes every single week. So how do you do it?
Okay. So I think, like, we've talked about this before. I forget what episode it was. We actually did a whole episode about why, like, how consistency is important as a leader, right?
Yes, I had nothing to add.
But how certain personality types are more inclined to be consistent versus not, or whatever. But I tried to tell Holly, like, I actually don't feel like I'm naturally that consistent, but on things that are super important to me, I will be that dog with a bone that doesn't let go. That's like, we are going to do this. Yeah. And so it was kind of like when we made the decision to podcast, I did not want to be a flaky podcaster.
Yeah.
I did not want to be one of those people that was like, oh, I'm starting a podcast, and then like does 3 episodes and then quits. Sorry. I didn't want to be that.
No shade.
No shade. It happens, and life happens, and there's always grace. But like, I do feel like, okay, a couple things we've done. We try to set aside time to plan. Yes. So we set aside time because it's you and I together. And so we set aside time to plan.
Yep.
We often take like 2 hours on a Zoom call, actually figuring out who are going to be our guests, what is our upcoming content schedule going to be, and digging into that.
Yep.
So planning ahead, and then really trying to make sure that our content is mapped out for, it's not always like exact titles of episodes, but we might have a general idea of like, what are the topics we want to hit on in the next 3 to 6 months, right? So that's one. And then secondly, it's been really having just a consistent workflow that I've shared before on a previous episode. We might have even talked about that at year 1, like because I had done podcast management for clients. So I have a whole system in Trello that I keep track of everything. And it just allows us to stay on track with all the things that have to get done each week. And then the third thing I would say we've done is, especially we've gotten better at this the past 2 years, is recording ahead. And so being ahead on our recording, it takes so much pressure off and allows us to stay consistent. So like right now, it's summertime, and we knew we didn't want to record a lot or at all in the summer. And so we like buckled down in May and June and just recorded a ton,
a lot
of interviews, which was kind of exhausting at the moment. But then now we haven't had any interviews, and we're not going to have any for several more weeks. And so it feels so refreshing to know we've got a whole bank of interviews that even if Holly and I, for whatever reason, couldn't get together and record, we could just use those that are banked.
Exactly.
And so those things right there, like, that has helped us to stay consistent. And then the other thing I would say that helps with the consistency is actually hearing from our audience and knowing that the episodes are making a difference for people. That just gives us motivation to keep doing it, because honestly, we're not getting paid for this. Like, we are not actually really making any money.
It actually costs money.
It costs money. And we've said that before, and we've like toyed with sponsorships. We toyed with different things that we might try. But, you know, ultimately, I think right now we both view this as part of our ministry and part of our passion to serve. And so it's something we want to do, but actually getting feedback from people that it is helping them, that it's making a difference. Those little messages mean the world to us. And that helps with the consistency, because if we didn't ever hear from people, we might be like, well, if we skip a week, nobody will notice.
Yeah.
You know?
I think going along with that, just having the vision of helping other women really is kind of what gives us motivation.
Yeah.
And I think that, you're the one that kind of slogs it out as far as the to-do list, but as far as like creating content and thinking about new things that we can be talking about, we're both doing that and both thinking on that. And I think that having a vision for women and what we want to see happen in women's lives in their leadership, I think is really motivational. So,
yeah. Yeah. And I think also just knowing that this is still a need. Like there are other leadership podcasts, there are even some other women's leadership podcasts, but I still feel like we have the angle of we're just like everyday women. We're not, you and I are not like, we're not an executive pastor in some big church. We're not, leading a huge corporation.
Yeah.
And so I think that for the average woman who wants to be a leader in her life, in her business, in her community, in her family, I think that we are able to bring that perspective of just like, we're normal people. We have stuff to say. We can bring guests that have amazing insights and just continue to encourage people. And so that vision helps us to stay on track with consistency instead of like just bouncing around from thing to thing.
And I just had this like thought, what a cool time we live in. Because when we were growing up, like if we wanted to have these conversations, we would have had to try to, grow a platform of some kind, get on some radio stations, get on some radio shows, or speaking, that sort of thing. And now we have it's all within our hands to create it. And I just think that's really cool.
Yeah,
so,
for sure. Okay.
For such a time as this, I think your husband said that to me last week.
Oh, he did?
He did. Yes, he did. So,
well, that's from my book of the Bible.
Yeah, it is. It is. Your
yes. Yep. Okay. All right. So now we're leading to our intermission. Welcome to the intermission. All right. We're going to take a break from like the more serious stuff, and we're going to pull from our deck of cards.
Okay, I'm going to pull one.
And we're just going to ask each other these random questions.
Oh, this is a good one.
Oh, okay, boy.
Are you ready?
I'm nervous.
If everything in your house had to be one color, what color would you choose?
Oh, my word. Everything.
That sounds really boring.
Yeah.
But I know my answer.
You know yours.
Yeah,
okay.
I really like blue.
Okay.
And I feel like there's enough. Okay, so there's enough variance in a lot of these colors that you could have different shades. But I feel like you could get really close to white and really close to black with blue.
Yes.
And so you could have enough contrast in your house if you use blue.
So we're saying you're allowed to have shades.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. I was thinking like one.
No. I'm saying blue, but you can have dark blue, light blue, navy blue.
Okay.
That's what I.
Okay. Did. So, because at first I was thinking white, because I was like,
me too.
If I was just thinking if it had to be just like only one.
Right. But think about how bright that would be.
Really overwhelming. Okay, so if I'm allowed to have shades, I would probably go with more in the aqua family of blue. Like, you know, the color shirt I'm wearing right now, which if you're listening, you can't hear.
You can't hear the color of Esther's shirt.
But, you know, it's like
to me, that
the song
like
Smell the Color Night.
Oh, yeah. It looks like seafoam.
Okay, well, that's in the teal aqua family.
Oh, okay.
This is like the lightest shade of the color that could then be more aqua, which is the color of my tissue box right here. And then we would go down to the deep shade of teal.
Yes.
Okay, so if you think about...
I got you.
You know, it's like my favorite colors, really. My brand, my colors. Oh, it's like in my journal, like a deep shade of teal. If you're watching on Facebook, you can see.
You can see this.
Okay.
Okay.
So, yes, I would go with that color. All right. My turn to pick a question.
Yep.
Okay. Serious question.
Oh, no.
Do you count your steps?
Like on a pedometer, or like now I'm going to take 10 steps to get to the bathroom?
I mean, I guess my first thought was with like a Fitbit or a pedometer or an Apple Watch or something. But I mean, I guess maybe there are people that count their steps manually.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
I have an iPhone and it's always in my pocket. So yeah,
Okay.
it's always counting my steps.
Oh, okay.
It's just, like, you don't even have to turn it on.
Do you look at your steps? Like, do you count?
Oh
look
gosh.
At the number?
Yes, I do. But I could care less about steps. I know that's terrible, but like, I would rather go for a walk and go look at the ducks. You know what I mean? Like,
just for fun.
Yes.
Knowing that you met your step goal.
Or like take a bike ride with my son or go to the grocery store and shop or something. Mm-hmm. So I don't really.
Okay.
But it is a good reminder to go, you've gotten a little lower, you've gotten a little higher.
Right.
Yeah. It's always nice when you've done something like a whole lot, like on our serve days or whatever. I'm always interested to be like
15,000
yes,
steps.
exactly. Yes, exactly. So that I do like doing.
Okay.
Okay, what about you?
So I got an Apple Watch recently.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of obsessed with closing the rings.
Oh, yes. Closing the rings.
I love to close the rings. Now, it's not actually about steps because I used to have a Fitbit.
Okay.
And so with the Fitbit, it was always like I was trying to hit my step goal. But with the watch, it's trying to get you to hit your goal for movement.
Oh, okay.
So obviously steps counts towards movement, but I think movement can be other things too. And then it also has exercise and standing.
Yes,
so like
time to stand
standing each, at least once per hour throughout the day. So I'm kind of obsessed with it.
Have you closed your rings every day since you've gotten it?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
But there has been a few times where I'm like so close that like while I'm brushing my teeth, I will like do like some squats or like walk around to try to like hit my exercise goal or hit the goal of, movement. If I'm like, whatever it is, 10 calories away, I'm going to do what it takes to get that before I go to sleep. So,
well, you are a very competitive person.
I am.
So
it works for me.
I am too, though.
Yeah, maybe that's why
maybe I need to
recently.
The rings.
That one. Yeah, I think it's different psychologically than just steps.
I don't like how watches look on my arm. And if we want to talk about some real trauma, let's talk about the fact that I wear my watch on my right hand and I'm right-handed.
Okay.
And so I've gotten lots of people who've made fun of me over the years about where, in particular, my husband.
Oh, I was like, who is making fun of you about which hand did
But
you...
it's been before him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's weird. All right, let's do one more question.
Okay. What's the most awkward thing that happens to you on a regular basis? Oh, I know Esther's.
Oh, no. What?
I don't know mine.
You know what the most awkward thing is that happens to me? What is it?
Well, I don't know if awkward is the right. Esther has a vortex of magnetic field of some kind.
Yeah.
That all electronic items, appliances, telephones, like computer equipment, anything breaks in her presence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything. Literally anything.
It is very weird. Like I'm really not a superstitious person. I mean, obviously we believe in Jesus here.
Yes,
we believe in the Holy Spirit. But if you watch the show Friends and you had Phoebe, and like Phoebe had her, she talked about her energy and how it like it like ruined devices and stuff, and then she had like the fire alarm that wouldn't turn off and she was smashing it.
Okay, but it's a real thing.
Okay.
Because, well, let me tell you, not like woo-woo, but let me tell you, my grandmother had a watch that she wore and never once replaced the battery. And she wore it for 60 years.
Oh, my word.
And
that's weird.
It's a thing, something with your, I don't know, the magnets or something in your body. Not magnets, not energy. I don't know. Something
I do think there's actually some scientific.
That's what I'm saying.
Real scientific reasoning for whether or not devices work for you or not.
Yeah, and I think you're the opposite.
I have the one that kills them. Yes, it is an ongoing joke in my family. Like,
well, and your friends too.
My friends. Yep. Okay.
Would you have said that was your awkward thing?
Oh, I wasn't thinking in that vein. I was thinking more like awkward, like you say the wrong thing when you meet someone. Oh, right. But that is
okay. Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
But what about you? What's your awkward thing?
I think this happens to everyone.
Okay.
Have you ever had someone say something to you like, have a good vacation? And then you're like, you too. And they're like, I'm not on vacation.
Right.
I'm always like, you too.
Yeah, like, happy anniversary, you too.
Yeah, I do that. Yeah. And then I just walk away.
Yep.
Or I babble uncontrollably. There's nothing in the middle.
Okay.
I walk away embarrassed, or I just am like, oh, you're going on vacation. Well, have fun whenever you do go on vacation. I hope you get some self-care, blah, blah. Like, yeah, that's me.
Oh, my word. This is going to be a funny episode to listen back to.
I don't know. I hope so. I hope it's not just funny to us.
No, I hope not too. But I think people can relate to that.
Okay.
Like the fear of when you're talking to someone on the phone that you don't know, that you're almost going to say, I love you before you
Yes. Oh, yes.
Have you done that to
Oh,
anyone?
100%.
I feel like I've come really close to saying I love you to someone that I don't even know.
Always afraid I'm going to do that with a man. For some reason, it wouldn't bother me if I did it with a woman that I knew. But if I was like, okay, love you, bye.
Well, it's even sometimes more awkward if it's like a friend that you like sort of know, but you're not super close.
Yes.
And then you like say I love you and they're like, did she mean to say that? Or is that just like a...
Okay, I have one more really quick one.
Okay,
so Maine, the state of Maine has banished plastic shopping bags.
Oh, yes.
And so now you have to bring reusable bags, which is great for the environment.
Oops.
However, have you done the thing where you're almost like you're like 95% to the store? Sorry for that terrible sentence. You're walking and you realize this, and instead of just turning around, you like raise your finger like, oh, like an idea has just hit you, and then you turn around. You have to make like an oh, or you have like you don't just turn around.
Why are you turning around?
I have to go back to the car to get my bag.
Oh, so you have your... Okay, I thought you meant you left them at home.
No.
And
I'm walking into the store and I've forgotten to take them out of my trunk.
Okay.
And I have to make a big deal about the fact that I've just had an idea. I can't just do a U-turn because then I feel like I'm crazy.
I get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying.
Okay.
Yes.
But
I can't relate because I just don't ever remember to bring my bags and I just pay for the paper bags.
Every time?
Up until this point, yes.
Oh, man. That's a lot of 5 cents.
I mean, how much shopping do you think I've done in the month of July?
I don't know.
So,
I don't know.
If you're listening, we are in Maine. I mean, I live in Maine. Holly's here visiting for the month. Yeah. And just as of July 1st, a new law passed. And there's no more plastic bags in Maine. Shopping bags.
You can buy,
So like now, for all of us who have cats and small trash cans, now we have to go buy plastic bags instead of recycling the ones we were getting at the grocery store.
But even the ones that you buy are paper.
No. Or
they're reusable.
Yes. So what I mean is now I have to literally go to the store and buy plastic bags to use as trash can liners and kitty litter disposing.
Maybe I could just mail some to you from Florida.
If you want to support the show, send your plastic bags to Esther Littlefield.
Okay. I thought that was going to be quick, but
okay. So our intermission is over. That was, I don't know how long of an intermission that was.
I don't know. It was probably longer than it should have been.
But here's what I'm going to say.
All right.
I'm also going to throw in our sponsor for this episode.
Oh, who is it?
Because, as we mentioned earlier, this podcast doesn't make a lot of money. So we're going to start having a sponsor each episode.
Oh, good.
Okay. And it's me.
Oh. Esther, you already have been sponsoring this podcast from the beginning.
This podcast is sponsored by Podcast in a Weekend mini course.
There you go. Yes.
So if all this talk about podcasting is making you think I should have a podcast, then you should check out my mini course, Podcast in a Weekend.
Yeah.
Because it will help you get a podcast started in a short amount of time. Mm-hmm. It'll give you the strategy side that you would get if you worked with somebody one-on-one, if you worked with me one-on-one, and it will give you all kinds of shortcuts and really simple ways to fast-track the process of getting your podcast launched.
And it helps you, I feel like, so I only know this because I know you. I'm sorry that I haven't actually gone through.
Well, you don't need to go through the course
because I already have a podcast that you manage. But I do know that it helps you get unstuck in their stuck places. Like for me, and for someone that we were talking to earlier, say naming your podcast is very difficult.
Yep.
Figuring out what your brand colors look like or your pictures. And like, so you
your
help
podcast
people get
artwork.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Those words that are appropriate. And
it helps with the tech, which is often one of the biggest issues of starting a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So if you would like to support the show and get something in return and you want to start a podcast, go to podcastinaweekend.com and you can check it out. It is only $37. So it's
that's a steal.
Really a really good deal.
Yeah, it is a good deal.
Yes. All right.
Are
cool.
we ready to get back into our regular
Let's do it.
Okay, I will ask.
Part 2 of this episode.
Part 2. Okay. What podcasts have you been listening to lately?
Okay. So I tried to pick different ones than what I had shared back when we were doing our 2-year celebration episode, which
nice
we will link up in the show notes. Holly may or may not have done the same thing.
No, she did not.
That's okay. So I'm going to name 4 that I have on my app right now. I have a lot more than that, but I decided not to share all of them because you don't have time for that. All right. So number 1 is Finding Something Real podcast with Janelle Wood. Mm-hmm. If you haven't checked this out, Janelle is just like the sweetest person you could ever meet. But she has a passion for helping young women who are either they don't know Jesus or they might have grown up in church, but they're questioning their faith, or they just are having doubts or things like that. And so what she does is she gets a co-host, and then her co-host is often a girl like that, like a young woman, a college age gal, or sometimes young adult who has questions about the faith, and like they'll have a conversation, and then she will bring on guests to help answer the person's questions. And they will get into some pretty difficult topics and conversations, which I think is just I think what she's doing is incredible because it's really different from a lot of other podcasts, and it's meeting such a specific need. And the way she navigates these conversations with the people who have the questions and the doubts, as well as the guests who sometimes are able to answer, it's just like, it's so refreshing. It's not preachy. It's not, overbearing. It's not like forceful in any way. And then the guests who are asking these questions are very honest too, which is so cool to hear. Yeah. So I love it.
Have we had Janelle on?
We haven't had her on.
She might be a good guest.
I know. Maybe we should invite her.
We should put her on our list.
Yeah. Okay. So she's been on my business podcast, but just as a coaching episode. All right. So that's number 1. Number 2 is the Just One Simple Thing podcast with Krista Hutchins. She has been on our podcast, but she launched a podcast recently in the past 6 months, and she used my mini course to help her. And Krista is a project manager, and just like she helps women with accountability and with getting your dreams off the ground. And she is providing like really short, simple episodes on one specific thing that you need to do. Like if you just need to like figure out how to schedule your week. I'm making that up because I don't think she's done an episode about that. But you know what I mean? It's short and simple. She's like a no nonsense type of podcaster, which I love. So that's one. And then I also am listening to the Bible Recap podcast.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because I'm going through the Bible Recap reading plan this year, which I love.
Ooh.
Yes, I love it. And I think I heard about it on another podcast that I listened to. And so I'm listening, and I'll do the reading plan in my app, and then I'll go and listen to the podcast.
Oh, cool.
And it's really great. I highly recommend it. If you have any struggle with consistency in Bible reading, this, for whatever reason, it's kind of like closing the rings. It's like knowing that you have the podcast episode to listen to after, it's working well for me to stay on track. And then lastly, I'm throwing in a Just for Fun podcast, which Holly's laughing because she knows what it is. I listened to the American Birding podcast.
Okay. What happens on a typical episode of the American Birding podcast?
Okay, people. So backstory is like when the pandemic happened, I was like, we're all cooped up in our houses. We're like on the stay-at-home order, all that stuff last spring. And I was like, I don't know. I was just feeling restless and like I needed something to help me get focused. And so I was like, just was on my app and I looked up birding and I was just like, I found this birding podcast. And
perfect for you.
And they started talking about birding in the pandemic and like dealing with not being able to go your normal places. And so the typical episode is like, basically they'll talk about rare birds.
Okay.
At first they'll do a rare bird alert.
Please tell me it's called Rare Bird Alert.
It is.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
And then there'll be a topic or a guest. So the host will like interview somebody and they'll talk about a topic. And then each month there's an episode specifically about birding that month, like June birding. And so they'll be talking about, there's like a panel of people and they'll be talking about issues in the birding world that month. Which I know you were like, what is up with you?
No, I'm not. But, the only reason I'm laughing is because we are so incredibly different, and that would I just couldn't.
If you were in, like, I was a science nerd in high school and, elementary school. I loved science. I've always liked birds, and this, like, is definitely very, very nerdy and scientific.
Yep.
But I love it because I'm, like, learning something new. And it's the reason I've been listening to it, and I don't listen to, like, every single episode, but I feel like it's such a break from my normal personal development, faith, and business type of podcasts that it just breaks it up. So when I'm just like, I don't want
for you,
just like a hobby. It's like a hobby podcast.
It's like self-care.
Yeah. So there's my list. That's my short list.
Okay.
For podcasts. Okay. How about you?
Okay. So one I've been listening to recently is called The Radical Christian Life with Doug and Paula Lay. And they are actually members or attendees, whatever, I'm sure they're members of the church that I attend, Radiant Church in Tampa. And they are so cool. They have their own ministry and they're just really, really cool. They're such a fun couple and so great. But they talk about things like right now at sort of the beginning of the podcast, they're talking about like, why do we read the Bible? Why do we believe in the Bible? Why does the Trinity even matter? Like, why do we need to know about that stuff? And so they are talking about some sort of basic theology things, but I think the reason that I resonated with it so much is they talk about what they're calling the radical Christian life, which is the Christian that is not, it's become radical to be kind of middle of the road and not extreme to one side or the other. And so they're calling this middle of the road the radical Christian life because it takes real discernment and self-control to not go to these extremes on either side. Yeah. And you and I have talked about that personally. I think we've mentioned it a little bit on the podcast, but
we talked about that with Chrissy, right?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
And so it's sometimes really difficult to live in that middle place where you feel like, well, maybe I don't have an opinion and maybe I really should stake my claim or my ground or where and what I believe. And they're just encouraging those people who are kind of in the middle and they're calling it radical, which it does feel radical right now. So
awesome. Sounds good.
All right. The next one is called Made for More. And this is actually the pastor of Radiant Church. His name is Aaron Burke, and it is a leadership podcast. He drops a couple episodes at the beginning of every month. And, he has grown the church a lot and he has a lot of leadership perspectives that I really like. He is someone that is very super consistent in his life. Like he gets up and he does like CrossFit and he's like running and he is like, mentoring people and like he's very highly effective and like just on 10 all the time, which is so different from me. And that's okay. But I really like listening to him and he's had some really cool people on that podcast. All right. So my next two, I'm going to say pretty quickly because I've mentioned them before. I mentioned them last year, but these are ones I just listen to consistently. So I'm always listening to Alicia Chiller's podcast and always either listening to the most current one or going back and finding things that I want to know about. And I'm listening. And I love the fact that even though I don't necessarily agree with her on every last little item, that she's really generous with her sort of perspective, if you will. I don't know how else to say that, but you're welcome there if you don't necessarily agree with her. And then on the business side, I'm always listening to The Ops Authority with Natalie Gingrich. And, I just can't get enough of Nat. She's amazing. So, and then I'll throw in one for real fun. And actually, I'm not going to give you an actual episode or show name, but I do like listening to true crime podcasts.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And there is one that I came across recently, and I'm not going to name it. I've only listened to one episode, so I don't know if it's appropriate. So go find and figure out whether these are appropriate for you. But there's one where there's a wife that loves the true crime and a husband that is really freaked out by it. And so she tells the true crime story and he just reacts, which is hysterical. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
yeah, it is.
I can get into those too. I can get into crime podcasts. It
can't be
weird.
too gory or too
No.
like traumatic, but yeah, I do like true crime.
I get intrigued by some of those really weird stories sometimes
Mhm.
because the human psychology behind it. And I'm like, how did this happen? Like, how did that
Mhm.
person get to that point where they did this thing? Whatever.
I love it so did you ever listen to Serial way back?
I didn't.
It was a PBS
No.
or NPR, I don't know, something. Anyway, I love when you listen to like one episode and you're like, oh, that person did it.
Yeah.
And then the next episode, they're like from a totally different perspective. And you're like, oh, that person did it. And then you get a whole nother twist.
Yes.
And then they're like that. And then at the end, you're like, who did it? I don't know.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, so moving on. We're moving out of our silly question. Well, not completely. Those weren't silly. That was good.
Silly. Yeah,
but we got to go to our next question.
Yes,
because this can't be like a 2-hour-long episode.
No, we gotta hurry up.
Okay, so what is the most exciting thing that has happened for you in the past year?
So honestly, the first thing that I'm really excited about is that we get to travel again.
Sorry, really Canada.
I know. Well, that's okay. It's slowly starting to
They're
open.
starting. They're gonna get there.
They're getting there. So that's what I'm really excited about. And I think the next thing that I am excited about is that we're part of a church launch in January. Well, it's a location of our greater church.
Yes.
And I'm just really enjoying being part of leadership there again. And we help in outreach and small groups and women's ministry and next steps and production. We're literally in everything. And it's just so good. Like, I'm so enjoying being part of that again and really building something from the ground up and getting to understand a new community and all of those types of things. So
I love that.
That's exciting.
That is very cool.
Yeah. What about you?
Awesome. So I would say mine is not as spiritual as yours.
Oh.
I mean, definitely there's good things happening at our church with being able to be back to kind of quote unquote more normal routines and small groups starting and all that. But the thing that I put down is that for my business and for the podcast, and, I have the other podcast, and then I had these separate businesses kind of all running separately, is that I was able to bring it all together under one roof at estherlittlefield.com and rebrand everything. And that has felt really good. And also being able to start Uplift, which is my program for Christian business owners, that has been probably one of the best things of this past year.
I think it's been good to watch you not feel like you have so many irons in the fire, and with everything under one roof, I know that's weird to say that way, but with everything under one sort of business umbrella, I think it just feels, even as I watch you go through it, it looks like you have more clarity and more direction, and you don't feel so split apart. Yes. Which I think I appreciate for you.
Yeah. She appreciates me not boxing her every other day saying, I don't know what to do.
No, I just like the fact that you don't have to live in that sort of waffling back and forth lifestyle, which, I mean, we all do, but anyway.
Yes, it has felt more streamlined.
Yes.
In my life and my business for sure. So, yeah. Okay.
All right. So you don't have an answer written down for the next one.
No, I have things to say.
All right. Are you ready? We've never asked this before.
Okay.
This is behind the curtain.
This is really.
All right.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about lately? So what deep thoughts do you have going on right now? What are you chewing on, I will say? I'm scared to know. Are you scared to say your answers?
I have my safe answer.
Yeah, I
and
have
then my not safe answer.
I have a not safe answer too.
Mm-hmm.
You can say your safe one first if you want to.
Okay. No, I'll go right for the unsafe one.
Go for the jugular.
Okay. What I'm thinking about is I need to get into therapy. And it is really annoying and hard.
Yes.
That's
really went good for you.
Yeah.
You went for it.
Because I feel like I'm not ashamed of going to therapy, but I still feel like there's this weirdness about it. Like if I were to say, okay, I'm looking for a therapist and I need a therapist that is good X, Y, and Z issues, right?
Yeah.
If I were to say, I need a new doctor and I need the doctor to know about knee issues and back pain and whatever, like, I don't know. You wouldn't even bat an eye
No big
at
deal.
posting that on Facebook or at saying, like, this is what I need. But if I think about doing that on Facebook about needing a therapist and I need them to know about X, Y, and Z issues, that feels a lot scarier,
a lot
harder. And then just the process of trying to find one. Like, so if I don't post on Facebook, which I haven't, but now I've said it publicly on my podcast, so there we go, Esther. But most of my friends don't listen to my podcast, so it doesn't matter. But like, it's just like searching for one and then contacting them and then figuring out if they have openings and then trying to figure out if they're a good fit. Like, there's a whole big process. And so a lot of times I feel like it's just easier to not do it.
See, that's so funny because I feel that way about an actual doctor. Like, I have a really hard time going to doctors.
Yeah.
I feel like I've had PTSD from past experiences because whatever, but it's really hard to figure out whether or not someone is right for you unless you just have that like awesome moment where you just click at the beginning.
Right.
Yeah. That's not easy.
Yeah.
Not easy at all. And what, like, waste of time and money if you go to someone
you have
and
to
it's not right.
A lot of times you have to pay to even go in for the first session. So it's like you're paying and you don't know if you're going to like them. And then, like you said, you don't know if it's just like, well, do I need to give it a few episodes, a few sessions before I decide. I've done the virtual thing and that was okay, but I'm just in a space where I feel like I would rather do in person. So anyway, that's mine. There we go.
Wow, man.
Boom.
Good for you.
What about you?
You can see my answer.
I know.
I'm scared to say these. Okay, can I say a caveat before I say these? Okay. I just want to say that I think about a lot of deep things a lot of the time. And nothing that I say or tell you that I'm thinking about, I have 1,000% landed in all areas. Like, I don't know quite what I think about certain parts of this yet.
Okay.
And this does not mean that I have gone off the spiritual deep end. I'm not crazy. I just think that it's really important that if these things come up in your life, that you need to chew on them and kind of figure them out, right? So when I say this, don't freak out. Okay?
Okay, everybody is good. I'm going to freak out.
Am thinking about the gender of God.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's scary to say out loud. So I guess what I'm thinking about is just the implications of what that means, the gender of how, each part of the Trinity, how God refers to himself in the Bible, what that means to our relationship with him, how that works itself out in things. And there's a lot of people that say, like, God transcends gender, and I agree with that, but he also chooses to call himself male in the Bible. So, like, I'm just thinking about all of those things. So I'm not crazy. I'm not like down some weird rabbit trail, but I do think it's important to kind of think about some of this stuff. Yeah.
And I mean, we're not gonna say specifics. No. And we can cut this out if we want to.
Okay.
But you did listen to, like, there was a podcast that sort of started this thought process.
There was a podcast that started this, and they had some ideas that I had never heard of.
Yes.
And as soon as I heard it, my ears kind of perked up, and I was like, what is that? So I listened to that completely, and I kind of listened to their thought process on it, and I was like, like, what does this mean and why, whatever? And does it truly have an impact on, our lives and stuff like that?
Yeah.
I'm not going off the deep end with anything, but, I think it's okay to be thinking about this.
Right.
So, okay. And then I'm also thinking about women's role in leadership. So I'm thinking about complementarianism versus egalitarianism and where I actually fall on that spectrum. And if you don't know what those are, Katie Cole actually has a really good resource that kind of explains that spectrum of where churches land theology-wise. And I am 95% of my way through this, and there's still a little piece left that I haven't quite landed on yet. Okay. And so I'm still kind of thinking about that. So,
and we'll link up the episode where
Yeah.
Katie came on and talked about that. And that's kind of goes back to one of the things we were saying earlier, in that we on this podcast don't take a lot of strong stands
Nope.
on secondary issues, because we know that there are some of you who land somewhere way over here and then other people way over here. And ultimately, you know, we don't feel like that really matters. We still feel like you can get benefit from this podcast, whether you're like, women should be preachers and pastors and we don't care, or whether you are more like, hey, we don't think women should be teaching men. Like that's wherever you land. And we're not going to come here and say, this is, you're right, and, you know, you're wrong and we're right, or vice versa, or whatever.
Nope.
But I'm also still wrestling through. So it's like, even if I had a place to land, I don't know if I could say it wholeheartedly, because I haven't dug into scripture as deeply as I want to really make my final stance on that issue.
And I think if anything, just the fact of like kind of struggling through this gives me grace for people no matter where they land, because it's not an easy issue to kind of just get through. And I don't want to just think what I was always taught. I want to know why I believe what I believe. And so that's kind of where that's going. And then the last thing I'm thinking about really quick is, how far can a lay leader go in church leadership without further schooling or training?
Oh,
where's that line? Is there a line? Does it matter on the church? Is it a personal responsibility thing where I hold myself back and say, I really shouldn't go any further until I've done X, Y, Z? You know, are there requirements that I should put on myself? Like, I should know this specific theology and be able to talk about it before I do whatever, you know, in church. And I think in that case, there's not really a hard and fast rule. I mean, obviously, if you are a full-on pastor, then there's requirements. But even that is different in churches. So, I don't know. I don't know why I'm thinking about that, but actually, I do know why I'm thinking about that.
Well, I know.
Okay.
Go ahead. Tell them.
Well, someday I would like to go to seminary, I guess is the reason why I'm thinking about that.
Yeah.
It's really what
Me
it comes down to.
So there we go.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So by podcasting the weekend to support Holly and I going to seminary.
Okay, I know we're not in the stage of life where this could even happen, but how cool would it be if we could go to college together and like, get a dorm?
We would have so much fun.
And, like,
can you imagine Holly and I like sharing a room in a dorm? Oh my word!
No one would want to be our neighbors. Okay. All right.
Okay, I got to add one more thing.
Oh, all right.
The other thing that I've been thinking about.
Okay.
Speaking of church.
Okay.
Is like, are we totally doing something wrong?
Yes.
In the Western church. Okay.
I've thought about that.
Here's my thought.
Okay.
And I'm just throwing it out there, and I'm not saying we are, because I'm a pastor's wife, so like we get it. But we have a lot of things happen at church where it's one person speaking to a group, but there's no way for people to reply back, right? Like conversations. And like, how much of a role does actually being able to talk through where you land in your faith and like questions that you have with the person that's delivering the message or whatever? Like, how much does that need to play a role versus have to play a role versus would it change the level of people leaving the church? Like, I don't know. Just having all sorts of questions about that.
I will say I have had an experience with that. I was at a church, not this one.
Not your current one.
Not my current one, and not the one that you guys go to, that we went to. But one in my past where I had a real sort of issue and concern, frustration. I was upset about something that the pastor had given a sermon on. And I went up to him and I said, hey, I'd love to talk about your sermon. Can we chat about it? And he was like, I don't know what my availability is. Just call my secretary. And ran off. And I was like, I get it. I was not expecting to have a sit down conversation with him right there for 45 minutes. Right. I get that. But on the other hand, I just felt really brushed aside. And did I ever do that? No, I didn't.
Right.
Now I'm the type of person who would. Yeah. But back then I was not. And so I was just left to squander in misunderstanding and frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I guess I expect a little bit more care.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I have no problem with someone saying like, I only have 5 minutes. I'm doing da 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 da, but tell me what's on your heart for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
So
yeah, that's
another thought. All these topics could be separate episodes, which they probably won't be anytime soon because we're going to figure stuff out.
Oh, well, I'm probably not ever going to do an episode on the gender of God.
Just
FYI, that's never going to
probably not going to be.
No, because that's not what this is for.
No, this is not your deep theological podcast.
No, go to your pastor and your leadership to get theological.
Yeah. All right, we have
question.
Our final question. If you are still with us, you get some kind of prize right now.
Okay, I'm going to ask it to you because I think you're the best person to answer this question.
Okay.
Even though we both talked about it together. Okay, what is the vision for the podcast moving forward, and what are you excited about?
Okay, well, when we started the podcast, we had a mission to help you women embrace your gifts and lead with confidence. And that, I would say, is still the mission of the podcast.
Yes.
Like, that's still why we're doing it. That's still what we want you to be able to do through listening to the show. But the vision moving forward, I think one thing is that we really want to be able to highlight more leadership journeys that will give you inspiration and encouragement and shine a light on different types of leadership. So telling stories that maybe we haven't told before about different leadership roles or times in leadership. You know, I'm trying to think of a good example. We've talked about this as like, we would love a story about someone who is transitioning out of a leadership role and then someone coming into that role and like how that can go smoothly and not be a complete disaster.
Yeah.
So if there's a story or a type of leadership that you want to hear more about, then just email us. You can email us at podcast@estherlittlefield.com. So that's a great way to reach out. Or you can also just post in the Facebook group or DM me on Instagram, really anywhere. But that's one thing that we want to do. And, you know, I know that some of our episodes have sometimes been more topical.
Yes.
You know, recently we've had topics that have been relevant to you as leaders, but maybe not as heavy on the leadership content. And so I think we're just going to kind of make a little more of a shift into really digging deeper into leadership and leadership journeys and the different views on it. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. And I think too, just to give another example, I think that we did have someone ask about women leading in a male dominated industry.
Yeah.
And then we were able to get someone in that sort of vein. And so there may be things in that arena that we're just not thinking of.
Yes.
And so we would love, especially if you're in that and you would love to hear whatever that thing is, if you'd love to hear something about it, I'm not guaranteeing that we can find someone, but
exactly.
We'd love to at least talk about it or think about how we can embrace that topic and chat about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like another one that I think of is people that are leading, you know, that are Christian, leading in a very secular environment.
Yeah.
And like how they navigate their faith and their leadership role and all of that. So that's another. So just tell us what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Because we'll at least try to consider it.
Yeah.
So, and then the other part of the vision is really that we want to provide you with more opportunities to go deeper. And so we're just going to share a few of those that we have and then maybe talk about one potential one. So what we already have is we have the Purposeful Leadership Facebook group, which is designed to be a safe place for you to connect with one another as women leaders, ask questions, to grow. We share the episodes in there, but we also talk about different topics that come up. People can come in and ask questions. Somebody asked recently about like being a woman in leadership and how you navigate friendships. And like, that's the type of thing that we want you to be able to come in and ask and get insights from other women in leadership. So that's there. I have the Confident Leader Catalyst course, which I have offered in the past, and now it's available as a self-study option. So you can buy the course, you can go through it on your own. And a lot of the gals in the Purposeful Leadership group have also gone through it. So they'll be able to chime in if you have questions. But that's a resource for you that if you want to grow as a leader, and have more confidence and more clarity around your calling, then that is a great resource for you.
Mm.
If you want to start a business online and be able to, really get your marketing foundation set up, then I have a course called Shine Online, and that will help you do that. And then lastly, still talking about what I do have. I'm sorry, I feel like this is really long. I also have a program. If you already have a business, if you're an entrepreneur woman who is growing a business online and I have it established, but I really want to get in community with other Christian business owners and I want more strategy and feedback on my marketing, then Uplift Mentor Mind is a great resource. So I'll put the links for all those in the show notes. But do you want to talk about the thing that we're thinking about doing?
Yes. So we are now in a place in the world where we can think about doing this again.
Yes.
But we would love to have some type of in-person connection with you. And so we are really thinking about whether or not we can do a conference or a retreat or some type of get together. And even Esther asked in the group if we did something like that, whether people would want it to be in Florida or in Maine, because that's where we are. And we had a real 50-50 split. So who knows where it will actually happen.
Maine and Florida are going to duke it out.
I think it depends on the time of year.
Yes. It depends on the time. There's a lot of factors that could play into this.
Yes.
And we are not saying this definitely won't be happening in 2021. Let's just say that. We know it's not going to be 2021, but potentially 2022. And we've talked about this before. Like before 2020 happened, we had talked about maybe we should do an event. And then that happened and just obviously that was put on the side burner. But we definitely love the idea of bringing you together in a place that would allow for that in person. There's just something different when you can meet face to face with other women and talk about leadership, talk about business, talk about faith, ministry, all of that kind of stuff. So we're still noodling on it, I would say.
We are.
But if you have a strong desire for something like that, then tell us, because if we have it, then we would actually need people to buy tickets and come. And, events are not cheap, but we both kind of would love to do it. So
I really love planning events. So that's one of the things I really want to do.
And the difference between Maine and Florida is, like, Florida would be easier for people to travel to, most likely.
Yep.
But Maine is much more like relaxing and not as crowded.
Yes, this is true. This is true. I think it also depends on what type of, I don't know how I want to say this, but like person you are. Like some people are like hardcore the beach, and some people they want some sort of like relaxing lake cabin or whatever. Yeah. And we're definitely not going to do any sort of like lake cabin in Florida because I'm not interested in anyone getting eaten.
Let's not do the alligator thing. So if you want to vote on that poll, we'll try to link the poll in the Facebook group, and then tell us in the comments, like, if you would buy a ticket to come.
Yes.
And tell us if you would rather it be more of a intimate retreat or a larger kind of conference-y type of event.
Yes.
That'd be good to know too.
I feel like it would be really cool if someone could gather up like 20 of their besties and come to our conference or whatever it is that we do. So and I think I just really want to hug all of our listeners. Yeah. So if you come, get ready for that. I'll have my own hugging booth.
If you're not a hugger, you're going to have to wear a t-shirt that says, "Don't hug me."
Yeah, Esther's not a hugger. So, but I'll hug all of you.
Yeah. All right, friends. Well, this is potentially the longest episode we've ever done.
Potentially.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because we also have the segment we recorded before that.
We're on 2 recordings at this point.
But thank you for being here with us for 3 years of the podcast. It really is amazing. And, there may be some changes in year 4.
There may be.
I'm contemplating some changes.
Oh, no. Things you haven't told me yet?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But nothing like drastic.
Guys.
I don't think it's going to be drastic. But, we have to always be listening for the Holy Spirit. And we also have to be doing things that Makes sense. But yeah, we also really value your feedback. So
yeah,
if you love the podcast, go ahead and give us a 5-star review and rating. If you hate it, go ahead and send an email to podcast@EstherLittlefield and tell us why.
Yep.
Or if you just have general thoughts of how you would like to see things be different or improve, then go ahead and send us an email.
But I think the underscoring thing of all that is we're super thankful for you. And we're super thankful that you listen and that you stick with us through all of our craziness and all of that jazz. So,
and I'm going to give a shout out to our editor, Brian, at Top Tier Audio. He deals with our craziness and like polishes it up. And I don't know what's going to happen with this episode because we don't usually record in the same room. So
sorry, Brian.
We hope that he can salvage this audio.
Yep. You also have other people working behind the scenes.
I do.
I mean,
not a ton at this point. I do. I may need to hire some more people.
Oh, okay.
But right now, I'm doing a lot of the other stuff.
Okay.
I'm doing a lot of the show notes and the graphics myself.
Yeah, well, you should be helping me. I'll help you with show notes. I've helped with show notes before.
I know. I have to delegate more.
I know.
Okay. Well, that's a different topic.
Hopefully we'll cut that part out.
Okay, friend. Thank you for being with us. Join us next week. There will probably be one of the amazing interviews that we have pre-recorded that we'll be sharing next week. So we look forward to continuing into year 4 with you here on the podcast.
Thanks for joining us on the Christian Women Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, come and join us in our private Facebook community. We would love to get to know you better so that we can make sure the podcast is providing what you need. Plus, you can share your questions and ideas, and you'll be surrounded by incredible Christian women leaders. To join the group, visit estherlittlefield.com/group. Now, don't forget, your leadership matters, and it's time for you to embrace your gifts and lead with confidence.